Hello everyone, my name is Charles, and in this video I'll be showing you how to create a complete authentication system by making use of Next.js version 5, now called Auth.js. This is a complete authentication system with email and password login, and also we'll be able to send a link to the email to reset the password, and once we register for an account, we'll also be sending an email to verify that particular account. So you learn how to send emails, how to verify emails, and also how to reset passwords. Another thing is that we do have social login, so we can continue with GitHub or we can also continue with Google. If you wish to learn how to create these forms using React Hook form with strong validation, I already have those videos here on YouTube, and I'll leave a link to them or to it at the description section below. So all you need to do is to go to my channel and check out this video. It is the compiled version where we do create all these forms, including registration and also the navbar, including the dark and the light mode. So if you wish to learn all that, I'll leave a link to that particular video at the description section below. Another thing is that this video is actually part of my full stack Next.js 15 course, which is available on Udemy, where we get to create a multi-user blogging platform. It is 18 hours long and it has a lot of content. So if you wish to learn Next.js 15 by creating a complete application, check it out, and I'll leave a link to it at the description section below. Another thing is that I am giving out 99 free access to this course, and I'll leave a coupon code at the comment section so that you can be able to access the course for free. Okay, so be among the first 99 people to go and claim the course for free using the coupon code that I'll leave at the comment section below. If you don't find the coupon code, that means that all the slots are filled and I deleted the coupon code. Okay, now let's proceed to work on our authentication system. I'll mainly focus on the logic in this video by making use of Auth.js. Previously it was called Next.auth. Okay, so far we were able to work on our auth forms, that is login and register form, and we are able to get our data from these forms, and we also added validation, which is cool. Now I want us to move to the next step where we add logic to our forms. So that means when we click register, we will be able to create a user in our database. For this video, before we set up a database, we will be setting up Prisma. So Prisma is an ORM. It will help us to easily communicate with our database without writing SQL queries. So the first thing that we need to do is to install Prisma. So open your project at the console. You can use Ctrl+C to stop the dev server, and right here will say npm install, then -D, and you'll say Prisma, and this will install Prisma in our application as a developer dependency. So let's wait for it to complete. I'll go ahead and install another package, which is Prisma client, and this is how we will install it. I'll say npm I and then say @prisma /client and then hit enter. If you go to package.json file, you should be having Prisma client at the dependencies, and also you'll be having Prisma at dev dependencies. I'll come to lib and I'll create a new file. I'll say db.ts. Right here, I'll be able to import Prisma client. So I'll say import. I will be able to destructure Prisma client, and I'll say from @prisma client. Then to initialize Prisma client, I can say export const db to be equal to new Prisma client, and I invoke that. So you can see we are using this as a class to generate this db object, which will be able to use in various parts of our application to create data, read data, edit, and so on. These on development will be created each time we have a hot reload. So that means that we'll have many instances of our DB or our Prisma client. For that, this is what we will do. If we are on development, that means that if we are not on production, we can do a check like this: process.env.node environment If this is not equal to production, that means that we are on development, then we will be setting global this, which is a variable in JavaScript, this object. Then we'll add a property to it called Prisma, and we'll set that to be equal to our DB. And you'll see these complaints because global this doesn't know about this Prisma object there. So what we will do, we will add the type to it like this. We'll say declare global. We will add a variable called Prisma, and we'll say the type for this one will be of type Prisma client, or it could be undefined. Now if these have a value, we will set our DB to be equal to that value. So I'll copy this and I'll come back right here and I'll say our DB will be equal to global this.prisma, or if it doesn't exist, we will create a new one. And then we export this DB and we'll be able to use it in various parts of our application. Now that is it for this video, and in the next video, let's create our Neon database. In this episode, I want us to set up our database, and we will be making use of neon.tech. It will give us a free Postgres database which we can use in creating our application. So what you will need to do is to sign up for an account if you don't have one, so you can continue with Google, GitHub or Microsoft, or use email and password. So I'll actually go to login and I'll continue with GitHub. I already have an account and I already have some few projects here. So what you will be doing is to create your project the first thing you log in. So I'll go here and I'll create a new project. I'll give it a name. I'll go with the defaults and I'll create project. Once I create project, you can see here, connect your database, and I'll click on Prisma here. You'll see here, we need to create these files, schema.prisma and the .env file. Come back to the project. At the root, make sure you create a new file and call it .env. Then you can go to git ignore and you can add your .env in your git ignore, because we should not push this file to our GitHub because it has some secret variables and so on. But in this case, we can see that we are already ignoring our .env file. Come back here and copy this .env by clicking on copy. I'll paste it here. Now this is the database URL that connects to our Postgres database on Neon. So I'll go ahead and remove these ones. Come to schema.prisma, copy these, and at the root again, we will create a new folder. We will call it Prisma. Then we will create a new file and we will say schema.prisma. This is where we will be creating our database schemas and so on. But for now, we'll just paste these, and these will specify the URL of the database to be our database URL. It will be able to read that value from our .env file. It is also specifying that the database that we are using is a Postgres SQL database. So I'll save that. And that is how we can create and connect Neon database to our project. Now in the next video, we'll come back to this schema.prisma and we'll be able to create a schema for our user. In this video, I want us to create a schema for our user, and we'll be making use of Next.Auth for authentication. And Next.Auth is being updated to Auth.js, and you can see a notification here. Next.Auth is becoming Auth.js. So I'll visit auth.js.dev website. So this is the latest version of Next.Auth. I can click on get started, then I'll click on Next.js there, and then on the side here I'll click on database. I can scroll and click on Prisma as the official adapter here, and on this other side I'll have schema and I'll click on Postgres SQL. So you'll see this is the Prisma schema that they are having, and this is now from Next.Auth. Since we'll be using Next.Auth, I want to copy some things from here. I will copy this model account and I'll also copy this model user. Now this is our user schema. So let's copy the two, but you can also type out what we have here. You can actually type them out. I'll copy, come to the schema and I'll paste down here. I'll come back right here and I will also copy this generator client. Provider is Prisma client.js. So I'll copy this, come back and paste here. Now it will complain about session and authenticator, but will not be making use of those. So I will remove the two lines here. And I think you will not have this nice syntax highlighting if you have never used Prisma before. For that, you'll need to install an extension for Prisma. Go to extensions. So you will search for Prisma and you will install this Prisma extension. You can refresh your VS Code and now check your schema.prisma file. It will now have nice syntax highlighting for string and keys like that, which is cool. And we can sync our schema here with our database. First of all, to generate the types, you can say npx prisma generate, hit enter, and let's wait. And to confirm if that worked, you can come to app, then let's go to auth, then let's go to register here, page. We could make our function here to be an async function by just saying async, and then right here await. Then we'll have our db which we created in the lib folder. Let's import it, and if I say dot here, you will notice that it have this nice auto completion, and we have account here and user here. So if you don't see that suggestion where you have db.user, so if I say db.u, we have this user, that means that this command didn't work as expected and something might be wrong. We'll also be able to make use of these schemas as types, form field component. And let's assume we want to add a type here called user. We can add the type now by saying user, and you can see we get that type from our Prisma client. So once we run this command npx prisma generate, we are also able to get these types. So as you can see, Prisma will help us to both work with our database, and it is type safe. It gives us the types that we might need later on. So for now, I'll remove this. It was just to show you. Another thing that we can do is to sync our Prisma schema here with our Neon database. You can run npx prisma db push, hit enter. Once it's done, we can confirm that by going to our Neon database, go to the project that we are using, and once you come down here at tables, you'll notice that now we will have two tables, one for user, one for account. But right now we don't have any data in our table. We will be able to create a user in the next video. In this video, we will now write the logic of our register so that we are able to create a user in our database. If we go to our user schema, you'll notice that we have ID, we have a name, email, but we don't have password. So we need to add a password right here. Just say password, click space or tab, then say string, then use this question mark, meaning that this password field will be optional. The reason that we are making it to be optional is because later on we'll be having social login, where you log in with Google or you log in with GitHub, and in such cases we will not be having password. Now, whenever you make a change to your Prisma schema, you need to regenerate the types and also to sync the changes with your database. I'll say Ctrl J and I'll say npx prisma generate and hit enter. I'll then say npx prisma db push, and you'll see your database is now in sync with the Prisma schema. Let me close this terminal. Come at the root here and create a new folder. Make sure it's at the root, and I'll say actions. And in this video is where we will create our first server action. A server action is simply a function that will run on the server, but we will be able to call that function from our client. So we call the function on the client, but it will run on the server. So inside actions, I'll create a new folder and I'll say auth. In auth is where we'll hold all our server actions related to auth. I'll create a new file and I'll say register.ts. I am supposed to mark this as a server action by saying use server. Then right here, I am supposed to export an async function. So I'll export const sign up, which will be equal to an arrow function, and this arrow function should be an async function. So server actions are async functions, and we specify that all the functions that we will export from here will be server actions by saying use server here. We include this use server directive. Now, once we call this sign up, and we'll be calling it on our sign up form, we will be able to get our form values. So here I'll be able to receive the form values as our arguments, and they will be of type register schema type. So here register schema type, like that. And then right here we can be able to validate those values like this. So I'll say const validated fields will be equal to our register schema now dot save pass, and I'll pass the values here. So we'll make sure that the values are following this particular schema, which is our register schema. And then now down here I'll say if validated fields dot success does not exist, that means that our values did not match our register schema, and therefore we will return an error. So here we will return an object which will have error, and we'll say invalid fields. So we'll come here and I'll say const, I'll be able to destructure, and right here I'll say is equals validated fields dot data. And now right here you can see we are able to get the name, the email, the password, and the confirm password. We'll get the name, we'll get the email, and we will get the password. Pop the terminal and install these two packages. Install bcrypt like this, npm I. We have a package called bcrypt and we have a package called bcrypt.js. You could use either, but I think bcrypt.js is more stable, so I'll use that. I'll use bcrypt.js and then install this one as a developer dependency, npm I -d, and then at types stroke bcrypt.js. Hit enter. You can go to package.json file. Make sure you have at types bcrypt.js at dev dependencies, and at dependencies make sure you have bcrypt.js. Now come back here and we'll make use of that bcrypt.js to hash our password. You will say const hashed password to be equal to we await bcrypt.hash, and we should now import this particular bcrypt from bcrypt.js like this. Import bcrypt from bcrypt.js, and we'll use it now here, bcrypt.hash. Then we invoke that. The first parameter will be our password, which is a string, and then the second parameter will be 10. So what this will do, 10 will generate some secret characters which we call assault, and it will use those characters to encrypt our password. And now we have our hashed password which we can save to the database. We will just say await, and we will bring in our db which we created in our lib. So if you go to libdb, we created this db which was basically an initialization of our Prisma client. So we will use this db, which is basically our Prisma, to interact with the database, and we will access the user, and then we'll say .create. We will invoke this and we pass an object here, specify the data, and we'll include the data in here. We'll be having a name, we'll be having an email, and we will also be having a password. The password will be equal to our hashed password. And if I happen to omit the email, you can see our DB is type safe. If I hover, okay, you'll see property email is missing in this type. So if I bring in the email, it no longer complains, and I bring in the password and we are good. So as you can see with Prisma, we are easily able to create the user without writing complex SQL queries. So if you don't know about SQL, you don't even need to worry about it, because we simply create a user like this to our database. We should make sure that a user cannot create an account with an email that is already in use. So what I'll do right now is to try and get the user by the email just right here before we even proceed to hashing the password. If the email already exists, we will not allow the user to continue. I'll go to the lib and I'll create a new file called user.ts, and in this file I'll create a function that will help us to get the user from the DB by using the email. And the reason why I am doing it at the lib here is because we'll be needing to do that multiple times. We could do it directly right here, but once we do it right here, we will not be able to reuse it many times. So we create a separate file for that. I'll export a function and I'll say const get user by email, and this will be equal to an async function. So this function will receive the email and the email will be a string. We can use a try and catch block. In the try, we'll say const user will be equal to await db. We import that from our libs. We'll say dot user dot find unique. We'll include an object, and here we'll say where full colon email. When the key and value pairs are the same, we just say email. Now here we'll get a user and we will be able to return that user. If we have an error, we will return null. So I'll go ahead and save. We will use it on our register here. Const user will be equal to we await get user by email. We invoke that and we'll pass our email. This email, we pass it there. If we have the user, then what we will do, we will immediately return. That means that we are trying to create a user with an email that is already taken. So we'll say error and we'll say email already in use, and I will save. Now this is our server action for creating a user. Now in the next video, let's see how we can call this sign up function in our register form to create the user. In the last video, we were able to create our register server action. Now there is one thing that we missed in this server action. Whenever we get an error, we are returning an error. But whenever we succeeded in creating a user, we did not return anything. But we should be able to return a success message like this. So I am returning now a success of user created once we successfully create the user. So I'll save this and I'll now show you how we can make use of this sign up. All we need to do is to go to our register form. The register form was in components, auth, and then register form. Once we submitted the form by clicking the button, we were able to get that form data right here. And all we need to do now is to call our sign up server action. These will come from actions auth register. We invoke it and we pass the data. Since our sign up is an async function, we could be able to use async await, or we can even tap a .then method. And once we do this in here, we'll be able to call an arrow function like this. If everything is successful, right here, we'll be having our data. Or we could be saying that it's a response. So it's a variable. You can give it any name. So this response, we can log it to the console so that we see what we get back. So console.log, I'll say res, and we will log that to the console. And just like that, we can test these. Go to register page and let's open and inspect there and go to the console. Here now we will try to register a user. So if we register, we should be able to get a response here. I'll click on register. It will basically take some time to process, and later on we see success user created. So we should be able to show a success message on our UI, and when it's processing, we should also be able to show a loading state. But as we can see, we are able to get a response of success user created, meaning that a user was created in our database. And to confirm that, you will need to go to Neon. Make sure you are in your project and then go to tables. In this case, I will refresh here and it will refresh my user table. And as you can see now, we have created that user. with the password which is hashed. So we have an alternative of checking the tables when we are using Prisma, and this is how you could do it. Come here, add another terminal, and from the terminal you can be able to run this command npx prisma studio, and this will show you the tables that you have in your database, which is cool. So it automatically opened on localhost these 5555, and as you can see, all models, we have an account model and user model in our Prisma, and you can see for user we have one. So let's click that and it will show you the table. So you could use that command npx prisma studio and you will be able to see what is in your database just like that. Let's handle the pending state and the errors. So for loading state, you could come here and set loading state, and then after it's done, you change the loading state down here. But in React, we now have a hook called use transition, which we can make use of, and it will automatically take care of our loading state. At the top here, we will have use transition, which will come from React. Now this is a hook. We will invoke this. This one will be able to return two things, and we'll destructure them right here. We will be able to get the pending state or the loading state. So we can give it any variable name, and I'll say is pending. You could say is loading. You could say loading. You could say pending. In this case is pending, and then we'll have a function that will help us to track that pending state, and we'll call it start transition. Now, how do we make use of that start transition function? We simply wrap our sign up with that function right here. Start transition, invoke it. I will pass an arrow function, and in here is where I will include this sign up. So I remove it in there. Once we do that, it will automatically track the pending state. So what we will do, we'll come down here. Label was register, and we could change this now. We will say if is pending, we can have a message here, else we'll have register, and if it's pending, we could say submitting, something like that. Another thing right here, we had a disabled, which we can now disable if we are at pending state. So we will disable the button if is pending, like we cannot click on it. The same will go for our input fields. We cannot be able to change the data if it's pending for each of the inputs here. I will save. Now let's test our pending state. We go to the form. Let's refresh. Let's try to create the same user. Technically, it should not create the same user with the same email. We register, submitting. You can see I can't change. After a while, we get a response and we get an error here. Email already in use. So the check for the email works. And as you can see, the pending state also works. Now, in case of an error, we should not show it on the console, but we should be able to show it on the UI. So right here, I'll add more states. I'll say const, and in this case now, I'll make use of the use state hook. Use state, it will be in form of a string. So the state here is a string or undefined. Then this use state will be able to return a value and a function that updates that value. So in this case, we'll have an error and set error. We make sure to import use state from React as well. So import use state and then write this. We will duplicate this and we'll give now these different variables, success and set success. Now we can just call set error or set success depending on the response here. I'll use a curly brackets, and I'll say set error to be data.error, and then right here I'll say set success to be data.success. They are complaining. Okay, it's not data but response. I was wondering what's wrong. Res.error and res.success. Sorry for that. Before we start submitting the data, we should be able to reset the states. So at the top of transition, let's reset the success state to null, an empty string that is, and we reset the error state to an empty string. Now, before our button right here, we should be able now to show either an error or a success. In the next video, we'll come back and style this properly, but for now, let's have this. So we show error or we show success like that, and let's save. I'll come here, let's register, submitting, and we get an error here, email already in use. In the next video, we will create a reusable alert component that we can show an error, a success, or any other alert with some nice styling. So I'll see you on the next video where we'll work on that. But so far, our registration form works. So I'll see you on the next one. In the last episode, we were able to call our sign up server action, and we were also able to track the pending state and the success and error states. In this video, I want us to create a reusable alert component. Go to components and we will go to common. We will create a new file and we will call it alert.jsx. Okay, .tsx, that is, we are using TypeScript. Stateless functional component, and we will say alert. Here we will be able to return a div. I'll be able right here to accept several props. Success, I'll be able to accept error, I'll be able to accept message. I will give them the types. I can do it right here, or you could create an interface for this, but since there are not many, we can do it here. So we'll have success will be boolean, error which will also be boolean, and then we'll have a message which will be a string. We will be able to have a span. So if we have a success and end, we will show an icon which is like a check mark for the success. Let's import it, import, and it will be coming from react-icons/io. Then right here, I'll be able to bring in IOS check mark outline, this one. So I'll import this long one there. I'll also bring in IO information circle outline, this one. Then we'll use the check here, self-closing. We give it a size of 10. If it's just an info, that means that we don't have an error and also we don't have a success. That is when we'll show this information there. So here I'll say if we don't have success, and if we don't have error, and we show now this other one there. IOS information circle outline. The size is 20, not 10, like that. Now we also have the one for the error, and we'll say if we have an error, and let's show. I don't get a suggestion for the imports, so let's import that icon again now, and this will be from React icons as well. React icons stroke by, then I'll say here like this, size 20. This is for the icons. So at the end here, I'll now pass the message. So we'll be having an icon, then a message. Let's properly style this now. Right here, I'll be having a class name. I'll make use of the cn function, which we created early on in the course. Then we'll give these styles. We'll have margin along the y-axis of 2. We will flex the items, and we'll say items to be center. Yeah, let's import this cn. Click here, control space, import. Gap of 2, padding of 3, rounded MD. This is the general style to style the icon and the message, but now we'll have specific cases when we have a success, when we have an error, when we have info. I'll just hit enter after the comma, and I'll say, do we have success? If we do, we'll add these styles: bg hyphen green hyphen 100, text hyphen green hyphen 500. If we have an error, we'll have this and bg hyphen rows hyphen 100. Then the text will be rows 500. For info, we'll do like this: if we don't have success, and end if we don't have error, and end we will show the styles here. Let's make sure we have a comma after this one. We will now say bg to be blue hyphen 100. The text will be blue 500. And that is how we can create our reusable alert component. Let's now make use of it in our register form. Let's actually remove the div here now. We don't have to have a lot of divs which we don't need. What we'll say is that if we have an error, we will show the alert component. We import it from common alert. That means that we should show this as a component. It will accept several props. We'll have the message, and the message now here will be the error. And then we'll pass a prop here called error. Now we'll pass a similar component to our success here. So if we have success, we'll say and end, we show the alert component. The message now here will be success. And instead of error, we'll be having success. So just like that, we'll now be having a nice component to show the error and the success. I save. Now let's see. Look, this is the component that we created. The icon, the text there, email already in use. Now for the info, it would look blue. That means that if we don't pass whether it's error or success, it will show a blue alert message like this one, which is cool. And just like that, we have created a reusable alert component, which we'll be able to reuse in different parts of our application. In the next video, I will want us to see how we can log in a user. So we'll start to explore that, how we can log in a user with email and password. Before we are able to log in, we need to set up Auth.js. And this is the latest version of Next.js. Version 4 was called Next.auth, and version 5 is being called Auth.js. So visit auth.js.dev, and then I'll go to get started. Right here, I'll be able to select the framework that I'll be using, and I'll go with Next.js. The first thing that we need to do is to install Auth.js in our application. We will run npm install Next.auth at beta. I'll copy that and I'll come to my application. Pop the terminal, Ctrl J, npm install Next.auth at beta. I'll hit enter, and that will take some time to install, so I'll wait. I'll come back and let's scroll down here. We will need to set up an environment variable called auth secret. This is the only environment variable that is mandatory when working with Auth.js. So I'll copy auth_secret and I'll go to my .env file, and right here I'll paste and I'll set this to be equal to. Here you should use a strong secret key. Now let's come back to the documentation. We will go to configure and let's see what we are supposed to do. At the root of our application, we will create a file called auth.ts. Hit at the root there, then add a new file. I'll call this file auth.ts. So let's copy that. Let's come back right here and paste. So we are exporting these functions from Next.auth, and I'll save. Then the next step, add route handler at our API folder. So we need to go to /app, /API, then we create a new folder, then we will create this and we add a route handler. So let's follow these steps. Let's minimize everything, scroll at the top, go to app. Then at app, we add a new folder called API. Inside API, add a new folder called auth. Inside auth, add a new folder. This is the syntax of this folder, 2 square brackets, and in here, I spread, so 3 dots, next, auth. You must follow this syntax for everything to work out. Now here, add a new file and we'll call it route.ts. That file should be inside this Next.auth folder. Now in route.ts, we should do this. We export const get and post, and we'll get that from handlers. So I'll copy this and right here I'll paste. So these handlers will come from our auth file, this one, and this is the handlers here. We exported it here, we import it here, and from handlers we'll be able to export, get, and post. So do that. I'll remove the comment and I'll go ahead and save. We will need to create a middleware.ts file. For now, I'll not create this middleware file because we'll be doing some changes, and what I need us to do is to go to guides here, and then I'll go to edge compatibility right here. Now we will need to do some edge compatibility setups, and that is because we are making use of Postgres SQL and Prisma, which will run on the edge. As you can see here, we have the problem, and the problem is the database adapters. So we can read this explanation right here, the first paragraph. A common package to pair with Auth.js to implement a holistic authentication system is a database client. And remember, we are using Prisma client as our package. Database clients are troublesome. Database clients are troublesome in that they often leverage TCP sockets to communicate directly with the database server. One such common database which does this is Postgres SQL. Generally, what you need to understand is that we have some problem with our Postgres SQL and our database client, and the database client is our Prisma client, and we'll be needing to get the user from our database by making use of Prisma in order to go ahead and authenticate them. So at the bottom here, there are some setups that we will need to do. The first step is to split our Auth.js file. We will create a file called auth.config.ts at the root of the application. So let's create this file. Now this setup that we are doing is for that edge compatibility, so that we are able to make use of Prisma in our application together with the next auth to authenticate users. So at the root here, I'll create a new file and we'll name it auth.config.js. And for now, let's do exactly like they are doing. Actually, let's copy it the way it is. So I'll come back here and I'll paste. So I see we have an issue. Import type declaration can only be used in TypeScript files. Here I said JS instead of TS. Rename, and here we'll say TS. So later on we'll be working on GitHub, but for now that is just a placeholder that we have there. So we are exporting that config, and let's save that file. Let's come back and I'll scroll down again. Now the next thing we need to do is to import that auth config from our auth.config, and we will include it right here. Another thing that we'll be able to do is to set up an adapter, and we will set up the Prisma adapter. One thing that I think we'll need to do is to install this Prisma adapter, and I'll say npm I auth Prisma adapter like that. Let's come back to our documentation. I'll copy this file the way it is. So I'll copy it and we go to auth.ts file. Initially we were doing this and we were including providers here, but as you can see at our auth config, this is where now we will be having our providers, and from here we'll be able to work with Prisma and perform some database actions and so on. And right here at our auth.ts, we can set up the adapter and include our auth config. So I will replace everything that we have here with this. We have bring in auth config and we are adding it here. Then we are adding an adapter, which is Prisma adapter, to be Prisma. And as you can see here, they created a new instance of our Prisma client. But what I would like us to do is to use the existing one, which is DB. So I will remove this Prisma here and say DB, and I import it from our lib. So I can remove this initialization of our Prisma because we had already done that in our DB file. So let's also remove this import for Prisma client. And now this is what we currently have. I will go ahead and save that file. We'll need to create a middleware.ts file. So let's copy that. At the root, I'll create a new file and I'll say middleware. Make sure the spelling is correct, .ts file, and I'll paste the content right here. And as you can see, we were able to bring in our auth config and we will use it here. Now, that is the setup for our next auth, although we will be doing more in these files. That is the initial setup. To wrap it up, we have auth.ts file like this. Then we split it up to auth config, where we have providers and we can write logic for the different providers here. That means GitHub, Google, or credentials. Credentials will be email and password, and we'll be able to write the logic for logging in a user in here. Then we have this middleware. So we'll do more in this particular middleware file, and I want to do that in the next video. So in the next video, we'll come back to this middleware file and we will do more right here. We also added a route API right here. So I'll see you on the next video where we will explore more about this middleware.ts file. In this video, you will learn more about our middleware.ts file, and you will see how we will control our application pages depending on whether we are logged in or not. Now we got our middleware function, which is auth here, by calling next auth, then passing auth config. And then by using a full colon here, we renamed our auth to middleware. Now I don't want to export it right here, but I'll actually come down here. I'll say export default, and down here I can be able to call this middleware like this. I invoke it, and now I can be able to pass an arrow function, and we'll have access to a request object. We can be able to get the logged in status. Const is logged in will be equal to request.auth, and this will give us the login status, but to make sure that it's always a Boolean, use double exclamation mark right there. Now this is logged in will either be true or false. Another thing that we can do with this request is that we can get our Next.js URL, and that is the page URL. We will be able to destructure something from our request, and that will be next URL. So right here, I'll say console.log path name. We'll have next URL dot path name. Down here, we'll just say export const config to be equal to an object, and in here I will pass a matcher. I'll pass an array. Normally here we pass a regular expression that specifies the pages that should run this particular middleware function, and in this case we can specify a page that we want this middleware function to run. I'll just say stroke login. Once we do it like this in all our application, only when we access the login page, that is when this middleware function will run, and in that case is when we will see this console log of path name. Then we will see the URL, and also we can see the login status. But in this case, the login status, we know very well that it will be false because we are not logged in. Let's test this functionality. npm run dev. Make sure that you run the application. Let's go to the browser, and right now we are at the registration page. If I happen to refresh this will not run the middleware function because it is not our login page. And then let's check the terminal. We make sure that we are not seeing this console log anywhere in our terminal. Now let's test with our login page. So all we need to do is to visit login. Once we are in login page and we come to the terminal, look, we get here a path name stroke login. And why is that so? Because this middleware function was called whenever we visited our login page, and we used this matcher to specify the page that should call our middleware function. So we could also include our registration page by adding it here. I save. Right now, if I go to the register, it should be able to call that console log, and there we go. And then we have a dent here that the login status is false. That is how our middleware will be working generally. At the config, we will be able to specify the pages that should call our middleware function. And then at the middleware function, by making use of this is logged in status, by checking at the path that we are at and so on, we will be able to control those pages. And I don't want us to specify each page manually. So here we will include a regular expression. This regular expression will allow us to allow this middleware to run in all pages, but only specific static files that we will not allow. And those include things like images. And to get this regular expression, we will visit the Crack website. So here I am at crack.com, and I'll go to docs, and then I'll go to Next.js. Then down here, you'll notice that we will also be having a middleware.ts file, and they have these nice config matcher which will skip Next.js internals and all static files unless found in search, and it will always allow the API routes to run the middleware function. So I'll copy this config, and what I'll do, I'll also include this config in a file in this particular section. So you can check this section for this particular config file, and you'll be finding this particular config code. So you can copy it from there, or you can just go to Clark and visit it like I did. So I'll copy that, and then I'll come back to my application, and I will include that as our config. So what this config does is that it will allow all the pages to run this middleware function, but only specific internal files and static files that they will not be running our middleware. Another thing that it does is that it will allow all our API routes to run our middleware function. Now we can test these. Let's try to visit different pages in our application and see if we get this path name. Let's visit the home page. It should run our middleware function. So let's see. We get path name as / login status as false. Let's visit the user profile. User 1. So we are at a user profile, and we are able to run that particular middleware. So this is working as expected, and I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we will control how our different pages will behave depending on whether we are logged in or not. I will come at the root of the application, and I will add a new file, routes.ts. In this file, allow me to paste these. We are exporting a bunch of arrays and also some strings. The first one here is a public routes array. Here we will be specifying which routes are public in our application. For now, it's just one. Another thing that we are doing is specifying the auth route, that is the login and the register page. And then here we have API auth prefix. Now this will help us to determine the API routes that are specifically for auth. And then here we have an auth redirect route. For now, let's redirect the user to the user profile, but later on we will be changing this to redirect the user to our blogs feed. And as you can see, we don't have private routes specified. And how we will be knowing that a route is private? We'll just perform a check. If the route is not in our public routes and the route is not in our auth routes, we will automatically treat it as a private route. Once we do this, let's go to our middleware.ts file. We will say const is public route to be equal to, we access the public routes array that we created in our routes.ts file. So I'll say public routes, and I import it from our routes. And this is an array, so we can use an array method dot includes, and we'll say next URL dot path name. So we will check if the path name that we are currently at, for example, if we are at /login, we'll check if it's in our public routes array. If it is there, then this is public route will be true. If it is not, it will be false. Then this is how we will check if a route is an auth route. Const is auth route to be equal to auth routes dot includes. Then we do the same thing. Next URL dot path name. Const is API auth route to be equal to. Now this was a string, right? We will use a string method. We will access our URL, next URL dot path name, and we will use starts with string method. We'll say API auth prefix. So if it starts with our API auth prefix, we will know that that is an API auth route. Down here, we'll now be able to do these checks. If it is an API auth route, we will allow the user to access that route. So this is auth routes that will be used for authentication purposes. Remember, this is not a page. This is an API auth route. So if I come to our app /API /auth, that will be used by Next.js to authenticate the user. And we should allow that to be always accessible like that, okay? Make sure that it's at the top. So follow the order that we are using. We can also move these to the top here so that they rhyme. Now right here, we will say if it is an auth route. In here, we will perform another check. So we are on auth route. Now let's see if the user is logged in. If we are at a login page or if we are at a registration page and we find out that the user is logged in, what we will do is that we will redirect them to the login redirect page. Else, if the user is not logged in, we will come down here and we will allow them to access the login page and the registration page like that by just saying return. So here, let's redirect the user, return response dot redirect. We invoke this and then we specify the URL that we are redirecting to. And here I'll have the login redirect. I'll use a comma and then I'll say next URL. So this is how we reconstruct our URL. And then now down here, if a user try to visit a private route and they are not logged in, we should not allow them. So this is how we'll perform this check. If a user is not logged in and this user is not on a public route, we should not allow them to access that particular page. So we will redirect them to the login page. Let's copy this. Let's come here. And instead of passing login redirect, we will redirect them to the login page by saying stroke login. If none of this is the case, we will just allow them to access that particular page that they are trying to access. So here I'll say return. Right now, if we try to access the private route, so this is basically a private route, a user profile, and we are not logged in, you'll notice that we will be redirected back to the login page. So let's see. We are at user stroke 1, which is a private route. Let's try to access it. I'll hit enter. Look, we are taken to the login page. Once we are able to log in and we try to access the login page, we will be taken to the user profile. Now, in the next video, let's see how we can be able to log in a user. So I'll see you on the next one. In this video, we will go ahead and log in a user by making use of email and password. And that is the credentials provider in Auth.js. We will need to go to auth.config.ts file, and this is where we were setting up our providers. We will be having 3 providers for registration and login in our application. That is GitHub, Google, and credentials provider. So in this case, I want us to work with the credentials provider. So let's remove GitHub here and say credentials. And these will come from Next.js/providers/credentials. Like that. And then here, instead of including GitHub, we will now work with our credentials provider. We'll call it as a function. We will pass an object in here. We'll be able to call an async function. So say async called authorize. This authorize function will be able to receive credentials, and we'll do some stuff with the credentials in here. And this authorize, by default, it expects us to return something. Return null for now. But before we return null, we'll be able to do something right here. We will start by validating our credentials by making use of the login schema which we had created earlier on. So I'll say const validated fields will be equal to our login schema dot save pass. We invoke that and we pass credentials and we will perform a check. So we'll say if we have validated fields dot success, we'll go ahead and do something in here. We will be able to destructure our email and password from our validated fields dot data. We can make use of this email and password to log in the user. The first thing that we will do is to check if the user exists. So we'll say const user will be equal to, we get user by email and we invoke these, and then here let's pass the email. We had created this function in our lib. We'll say if we don't have a user, or if we don't have user.password, we will not allow the user to log in. Basically what we will do, we will return null. This complaints, if I hover, you'll see password does not exist on type promise. So this, we were supposed to await it. Let's say await, otherwise it will return a promise instead of an object. Now the last check that we'll perform is for password. We must check if the password is correct and we'll make use of bcrypt. So we'll say const is correct password will be equal to await bcrypt.js dot compare. We don't get the suggestion to import it, so let's import that one manually. And what we will import here is bcrypt.js. Make sure the spelling is correct. This will expect us to pass two things. The first one is the password that we entered in our form. Then the other one is the password from the database, and we'll be able to get the password from the database by making use of this user. We'll say user.password. Bcrypt will be able to compare the two. This is in plain text and this is the hashed password in our database. Now cannot find these. Again, make sure the spelling is correct here. If the password is correct, we can perform a check again and we will be able to return the user. And by just doing this, we have logged in our user. And else, if this is not valid, we are returning null here, meaning that the user will not be logged in. Now let's save that file. Now we can be able to call this sign in with email and password, both on the client component and on a server component. So that means that we can be able to come to our components. We go to Auth login form, and right here, we can be able to call that sign in and pass our data. But I want us to make use of a server action to call that sign in because I'll want to see the loading state. I'll want to see the errors and so on in our form. Other things that we will be doing is the email verification part of it. We want to make sure that the email is verified. And another thing is that we would want to send a verification email if that email is not verified. It will make sense if we create a server action for that to separate all that logic instead of including everything here. So I'll come to the actions, and right here we already had the register server action, and I'll create a new one and I'll call this one login.ts. Some of the things will be similar to our register. So let's copy this. Let's come to login and let's fix some of this stuff. First of all, I will remove bcrypt from the import. Then I'll come down here and I will remove bcrypt from here. We are not hashing the password. We are not creating a user, so I will remove this part of it. I will remove this return for user created, and let's go at the top. Let's rename this function to login. Right here, we'll get the values, but they will be of login schema type. So let's change this to login schema type. Right here, we will validate the fields again, but we'll make use of the login schema. Now let's remove these imports for register, and we remove db as well. So if the fields are not valid, we will have a return of an error of invalid fields. And now we'll be able to see that error at our form. So that is one of the reasons why we would like to create this server action. We'll be able to get the email and the password from our fields like that. And here we will be able to get the user by making use of an email. If we don't have the user, if we don't have an email, or if we don't have a password, we will return an error of invalid credentials. Now there was a situation where a user could be there, but we don't have user.password for the case of Github Login or Google Login. So here I'll also add if we don't have user.password. Here we'll be able to check if the email is valid. Email not verified. But later on, what we will be doing, instead of returning an error, we will be sending an email to verify that particular email. Okay, then what we will do is to now call our sign in to actually sign in a user. Let's have a try and catch block, and right here I will await sign in, and it will come from stroke auth. That stroke auth is our auth file, this one. So this sign in is the one that we are calling right here. I will invoke it. The first thing we will do is to specify that this is for credentials login. Then here we pass the data. We will pass our email and we'll also pass our password. Another thing that we can do is to have a redirect URL. So we will redirect to our login redirect. Now, just like that, we will be able to log in. And then for the error here, we'll say if error instance of auth error. Let's import that from Next.auth. Let's use a switch statement here. Error.type. Then right here, we'll have a case if it's a credential sign-in error, use a full colon. We will be able to return an object and we'll say error, invalid credentials. This is for the case when it's credentials sign-in. Else, if it's any other, so we'll have a default here. We'll be able to also return an error, something went wrong. And for now, we know that the email will not be verified because we haven't written that logic. So let's comment out this part first, okay? Now all we need to do is to take this login and call it at our login form here. So before on submit, at the top here, let's have const is pending and we'll have start transition to be equal to use transition, and we invoke that. Use transition will come from React. Now we can make use of this start transition right here. I will remove this console log and I'll say start transition. I will invoke that. We pass an arrow function. In here, we will call our login server action. We will invoke it and we'll pass data to it. We'll be able to say dot then. We'll be having a response and we can have an arrow function right here. Then we can perform a check. If we have response.error, we will be able to set up the error here. So let's come at the top again, const, we'll have error and we'll have set error. This will be equal to use state and we will invoke it. By default, it will be an empty string. We'll specify the type for the error. Now here, we'll be able to set the error and we'll say it's response.error. Before we call start transition, we'll make sure that set error is an empty string. Now, in case of an error, we'll do something similar that we did with the register form. So I'll copy this part, then I'll come back to the login form and I'll paste it just right there before the button. Then I'll make sure to import our alert component. So control space, once you click at the end there and auto import. And then we have this is pending, which we will include on our fields here. We had done something similar. So we disable the fields if we are submitting the form like that. Also, we disable the button and I save. Now all we need to do is to test if it will actually log in a user. So I'll save that and then make sure that this is running, npm run dev. And for me, I actually forgot the email and password I used. So what I'll do, I'll go to register here. I'll create a new user. I'll use a dummy email. We are not verifying email for now. Then I'll set up a password. I will register. It's submitting, user created. Now let's go to login. Then right here now I can log in. First of all, let me use the wrong password. I will log in and you see invalid credentials. So I wanted us to get these errors here by making use of that server action. Another thing is that I'm not seeing the pending state on our button. So let's go to the button. We should do something similar to our registration form. So I will copy this one. I will go to the login form and I'll paste it there. Then instead here of register, I'll say login. I'll save. Now let's try to log in with the wrong password again. Login, submitting, invalid credentials. Now let's use the correct credentials and I'll go ahead and log in. Once I am logged in, I should be taken to the user profile. That was our login redirect. So login, submitting, and nothing actually happens. So I think what we could do is to go to the middleware. Let's log the status of is logged in to the console. Then right here is logged in. Let's save. Then let's come back to our browser here. Let's refresh this. Okay, once I refresh, it redirects me. So we are logged in, and if I come here, you can see login status is true, but it was not redirecting us correctly. But let's fix that in the next episode, because right now we need to first log out. We don't have a way to log out. So in the next video, let's implement this sign out button so that we are able to log out, and then we will fix our redirect for the login. In real sense, it works, only the redirect fails. And if we try to visit register and login, we are not able to access those pages because we restricted those pages when we were working on our middleware. So our restriction worked. We added this restriction here. If we are logged in and we try to visit an auth route, we redirect them to the default login redirect. I'll see you on the next video. In this video, I want to show you how we can sign out a user from our application. In the last video, we successfully logged in a user, but we actually faced a problem where we were not correctly being redirected to our logged in page. So first of all, let's sign out a user so that we are not stuck on the logged in status, and then we can try to figure how we can get redirected properly after login in the next video. We'll go to components, layout, and at this user button is where we had our button for sign out. And in the last video, I told you that at our auth.js file, we are already exporting sign out and sign in functions. Now, what I forgot to tell you is that we can only use this sign in and this sign out from the server. So that is from a server action or from a server component. I actually misread you by telling you that we can call this sign in directly in our form, but our form is a client component. But we have a solution where we have the sign in and the sign out for a client component, and this is how we can get them. So in our user button, go at the very top, and right here we'll be able to import from Next.js/React. Now from this package, we can be able to get sign in, and also we can be able to get sign out, which we can use on our client components. So I want to sign out the user from the client. So here we'll only sign out a user. And since this is from the client and we will be making use of an onClick event at our button here, we should mark this component as a client component. So at the top here, we can just say use client. Now here we can be able to make use of an onClick event, invoke an arrow function, and what it will return is our sign out. I just need to invoke that function. I'll go ahead and save. Let's go to our browser and see if it works. You can actually see the login status right here. It's true. But if we go to the browser here and then click sign out, let's see what happens. You can see it's loading and it will take us to a different page, and we can confirm that by coming here. We check the login status and it's now false. So that is how we can be able to sign out a user from our client. If we come to our application, we had created this login, which is our server action for logging in a user, and we had this redirect right here, but it seems like it's not working. So in this video, we'll try to fix that, and I want to redirect the user manually after they log in, and I'll do that in the login form. So after a user logs in, we will redirect them. Right here, we can make sure that we don't have an error first before we redirect them by saying if we don't have a response.error, that is when we'll go ahead and redirect the user. We will redirect the user by using the next router, and to get the next router, we'll make use of the use router hook here. We'll say const router will be equal to use router, and you'll notice that we have two, router and navigation here. Make use of next navigation, that is the latest, and import use router from there. Then invoke use router, and now we have this router object which will give us some methods to work with. And the method that we will use here is router.push. I'll invoke that and I'll call the login redirect here. Make sure you import it from our routes file. So if we don't have an error, we just push the user to the login redirect like that. I'll save, and now we can test the application. Make sure the application is running, then come to the browser. I will refresh to make sure that everything is up to date, and then now let's try to log in. So I'll use a valid email, but for now let's use an invalid password to make sure that if we are not logged in, we will still see the errors, which is cool. It's working. Now let's use correct password, and I will log in. It's submitting. Once we are logged in, we are directly taken to the user profile. And if we try to go to the login page, it's not working. If we try to go to the register page, it's not working, meaning that we are logged in. But if we happen to sign out is working. And once we sign out, we are taken to those pages and you are able to access them. In this video, we will conditionally render the different parts of our navbar depending on whether we are logged in or not. So the first thing that we should be able to do is to get our session. We will go to our app, then go to layout.tsx, and we can be able to get the session like this. I'll say const session. We await auth. This auth will come from @auth. Make sure to invoke that. Once we use await, we should mark the parent function as an async function. And for us to be able to get our session on the client, we will wrap the entire of our application with a session provider component. So here you will say session provider, and this session provider component will come from Next.js React. We will wrap the entire of our app with that session provider, just like that. Then the next step is to pass the session right here as a prop, just like that, and save that file. Once we do that, we will be able to get access to the session on the client by making use of the use session hook. And whenever we want to get the session from the server, we'll do something like this. Now let's come to the navbar. Currently, our navbar is a server component, but if you check at the navbar, you'll notice that most parts of the navbar is actually client side. For example, theme toggle is client side, search input component will be client side, notifications will also be client side, even our user button. So what I would like to do is to just make our navbar to be a client component by saying use client. Then to get the session on the client, we'll say const session will be equal to use session. This will come from Next.js React, and I'll invoke that. Currently, we can rock this session to the console and see what it has, okay? And save that file. Go to our app, go to the console, make sure your app is running by the way, and we'll see what our session has. You'll see a session is an object. Let's expand the object. We have data. On top of that, we have this status authenticated. Now let's test our status here. Let's log out. Then now data is null, then status is unauthenticated. Let's log in. There is something that I want to test because session was not correctly updating, and let's log in and see. Now see, we are logged in, we are redirected, but we have a problem here. The session did not update to the authenticated status. It is still unauthenticated. We don't have any data. If I refresh the app, that is when we get everything. So what I would like to do is to manually update the session at our navbar. I am not sure if this is the correct way to do it, but at least it works. I'll call the use effect hook. I'll invoke it. I'll pass an arrow function here. We'll also have a dependency array. We can be able to get the status of our authentication here. Const is logged in will be equal to, if session.status is authenticated, then we are logged in. Another thing that we can be able to get is our path. So here I'll say const path will be equal to use path name from next navigation. Whenever we change the route, so I'll pass this in the dependency array, or when is logged in changed, we want to call this use effect. In these curly brackets, I'll say if we are not logged in, I will update the session. So when we change a path and we are not logged in, I'll update the session. Since this use effect will complain that we are not using the path, you can say if we are not logged in and we have a path, const update session to be equal to an arrow function like that. We created this function, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want this to be an async function. And here we'll now be able to await our session dot update, and we invoke that. So that will update the session, and then now down here I can call our update session function like that. So this is the code here for updating our session, because for some reason it's not updating. And if you know how to actually update it, let us all know, and then I can update this part of the course. Let's log the session to the console. So I'll just say session. I don't have to include some other text. And right now we are authenticated. I'll quickly log out and log in again and see. Now we are unauthenticated. Let's log in. Now I am logging in and let's see. We are redirected and look, our use effect is called and we now get the updated session here. So unauthenticated, loading, then we are authenticated. Let's now come here and make use of this is logged in to conditionally render our parts here because now it's up to date. I'll just use curly brackets and I'll say is logged in and we show whatever I want. I'll duplicate these and the first one will be for notification. So for theme toggle, I'll want it to be in both logged in and logged out pages. But for notifications, I want it to be only when we are logged in. So if we are logged in, we will show our notifications. Again, if we are logged in, we will show our user button, meaning that if we are logged out, we will not see them. We have this part here where we have our register and login. Right now, I'll say if it's not logged in. So use an exclamation at the beginning of that and we'll show now these pages here. So if we are not logged in, is when we'll see these and I'll save. So that is how we can conditionally render the navbar and update our session. Right now, we are logged in and we don't see those links for login and register. Let's happen to log out. Now we are logged out and we have a login and register there. So I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we will implement the functionality for continuing with GitHub here. You can go to stroke API, stroke auth, stroke providers. These will give you a list of the auth providers that you are currently using in your application. Also make sure to click on this pretty print so that you see it like this. And now currently all we have done is to implement the credentials provider. We want to add the GitHub provider now. So what we need to do is to go to the auth.config.ts file, and this is where we were setting up our providers. Let's import GitHub from next-auth stroke providers stroke GitHub. I can take it at the top here where we are also importing the credentials. We'll come to this providers array and add our GitHub here. So I can say GitHub, invoke that function, and at the end there include a comma. This GitHub function will accept an object. This object will have client ID, and the other thing that will have is a client secret. So to read the values from the environment variable, we'll say process.env, then the name of the environment variable. We will call it GitHub underscore client underscore ID. For this one, we'll have process.env.github underscore client underscore secret. Let's add these environment variables. We'll come to the .env file and we'll specify here. To get the client ID and the client secret for our GitHub, we'll need to go to github.com. So go to github.com, then we will go to this profile, click on settings. On the side here, at the very bottom, developer settings. Click on developer settings, then go to OAuth apps, and we will create a new OAuth app. Let's give this app a name. Then here we'll include the homepage URL. So it's localhost for now, localhost 3000. Remove that / so that it's only this way. Then we'll have application description, which is optional, so I'll skip that. Then we have here authorization callback URL. So I can click on this and it will give us stroke API, stroke auth, stroke callback, stroke GitHub. Now another way that we could get this is if we come to stroke API, stroke auth, stroke providers. After we implemented these providers and we visit this URL, so let me refresh, we will see that GitHub will be added here and it will have that callback URL. Look, we have now GitHub and we have this callback URL, which is localhost 3000 stroke API stroke auth stroke callback stroke GitHub. So this is the one that we are providing in our GitHub or Auth app. And I'll go ahead and register that app. Once we create the app, you'll notice that now we have a client ID here. I'll copy this client ID, come back to my code editor.env file and include my client ID. Let's come back here and we have here client secret. Let's generate a new client secret. Here you'll be asked to like login and so on. Now I have the client secret generated and I'll copy it. Then I'll go to my VS Code and I will paste it here. The next thing that we need to do is to make that button functional. So that button was at our components, then auth, then social auth. This is where we had added an onClick event and it was empty. So what I'll do, I'll create a helper method that will be reusable. Const handle on click. I'll set this to be equal to an arrow function that will receive something. Now to sign in a user with GitHub or Google, all we need to do is to call the sign in function, which we will get from Next.auth /React. And here I will invoke these and we are supposed to specify which provider that we are using. All we need to say here is either GitHub or Google. What I'll do is that this function will accept the provider. The type of this provider will be either Google or it will be GitHub. So now here I will say that the provider is provider. Then I'll have a comma and pass an object here. I'll specify the callback URL. So we are supposed to make use of redirect to instead. Let's do that. Here I'll have the login redirect. These we had specified in our routes. And now we have this handle on click, which we can call right here. So instead of passing this object, I will remove it. I'll pass handle on click. I will invoke it and pass the provider as GitHub. I will save. We'll have a similar thing for Google. Invoke this and we'll say Google. GitHub login should work while Google should not, because for GitHub we have set up our auth config and included the client ID, client secret in our .env file, and we also made sure to set up that up on GitHub. So let's test it out and see if we are able to create a user with GitHub. npx Prisma Studio, or you could go to Neon directory to check, but I think the Prisma Studio will be easy to get access to right here. And currently we only have 2 users. So I'll come here and I'll click continue with GitHub, and look, it will ask us the permissions and so on. So I will authorize the application. It's loading and we are in. We are logged in. Let's come here. Let's refresh the users like this button. And now we have another account here. The email, the name, and so on. And if you scroll at the end here, you'll notice that at accounts we have 1 account, but for this is 0, and that means that GitHub was successful. If we click these accounts, we can see the details here. And for GitHub we have auth, GitHub is the provider, and some more details. So authentication with GitHub worked. And in the next video, what we will do is that we will implement functionality for continuing with Google. In this video, I'll show you how we can continue with Google. We are currently using GitHub and credentials. To add Google, let's go to our VS Code and you'll open your auth.config.ts file, and we'll do a similar thing like we did with our GitHub. So first of all, let's duplicate this import for GitHub, and now right here I can be able to say Google, and we will bring that in from Next.auth providers /Google. Then I'll duplicate this, Alt Shift bottom arrow, then here I can say Google. Now here I'll highlight this, use Ctrl D to edit even at the bottom there, and I'll say caps Google. Now let's specify these environment variables. I'll highlight that, use Alt, then highlight this one, copy, come to .env file, and we'll include it here. And I'll save for this, save this file as well. Now, if we come here and we refresh these stroke API, stroke auth, stroke provider, we get these. Click on the pretty one and we'll have Google as well. Now, how do we get the Google client ID and the Google client secret? So we'll need to create an app at Google. So what we'll do, we'll go to our browser, search for Google Cloud, then visit that particular page, cloud.google.com. Then here you'll click on console. You'll come right here at the top and you will create a new project. And if you don't have any project, it will actually ask you to create a project. So just provide the project name and create. I had already created the project. You can see it here and it's currently selected. And now you'll go to API and services. If you don't see this quick access, you can also search for it, API and services. I'll click on API and services here. I'll go to the auth consent screen and we'll give it access to the external so that we can test it with any Google account. Then I'll go ahead and create. Here we will be asked to provide an app name. I'll use the highlighted email. Come here and we'll have developer contact information. You can provide an email. I'll save and continue. For the scopes, we don't need to provide any scope. Save and continue. Test user, don't add any, just save and continue. And then we have the summary. Everything is fine. The next thing that we'll need to do now is to come to credentials. Click on create credentials. Then you'll come here, auth client ID. Application type, it will be web application. The name, I can say web dev blog 2. Authorized JavaScript origins, add here, and you'll come here and copy your home URL. I'll come back here and I'll paste. Remove that /. Authorized redirect URLs, click on these, come here, and where you have Google, you'll include these now. HTTP localhost 3000 /API /auth /callback /Google. You can also type it out and include it here. Make sure you don't have the / as well, and I will create. All the client created, and look, now we have client ID here, and I'll copy that. I'll come to my VS Code and I'll paste the client ID right there. Let's come back. We have client secret. I'll copy that and come back to the VS Code and paste the client secret. Now I'll save. If you go to your social auth.ts component, which was available at components auth social auth, we had added this on click, handle on click, we pass Google. That handle on click is right here where we call sign in from Next auth React and we include the provider. Now in this case, the provider will now be Google and the redirect URL will be login redirect. Now let's test if that button works. So currently we have 3 users, so we can keep track. And here now you need to continue with Google, but make sure you use an account that is not connected to GitHub. Otherwise it will fail, because if you had already created an account with GitHub in the previous video and you try to create now, then it will not accept. So I will continue with Google and make sure I use a different Google email account that is not the one that I used on GitHub. So I will continue. And look, we are logged in. Let's verify. So I'll hit a refresh. You could also check this on Neon directory. And look, an account was added. You'll see that the provider for this is now Google. We have Google and we have this GitHub. So it's working. And that is how we can be able to continue with GitHub or Google. Whenever we register for an account with Google or GitHub, I want us to automatically verify the email, because Google and GitHub already verifies the email and we don't have to repeat that. The first thing that we will do is to just come at the root of the application and open your auth.js file. Right here, we will have something else that we call events, : and I'll open this curly brackets. And right here, we'll be having an async function and it's called link account. This link account will be called every time we use an Auth provider to register for an account. If we use credentials, email and password, it will not be called. So here I'll just invoke and I can pass these curly brackets like that. Right here, I'll be able to destructure something that is our registered user. And in here, I want us to update our user in our database. So I'll just say await db.user.update. I will invoke these. We'll specify the ID of the user that we want to update by saying where ID is user.id. I'll say data and we'll update our email verified to be new date. And I'll invoke that. So remember, if you come to your user schema, so in Prisma schema, we had email verified and we are setting it as the date of when the email is verified. And just like that, whenever we use an Auth provider, it will automatically verify the email. To test this, we need to first remove our users here. So I will remove the user where we used GitHub and also the one that we used Google, and I'll delete those two records. So we will try to register an account with GitHub and see if email will be verified. It should have a date. So let's come here, sign out here. I'll click continue with GitHub. We are logged in. Let's go to Prisma Studio and hit a refresh and see if it created our account and verified the email. There we go. We have this account and look, email verified. We have a date of when it was verified, meaning that that functionality of link account works. Another thing that I want to show you is that if I come to right here, let's go ahead and sign out. For GitHub, I made use of Chaoo's email. And if I try to log in with Google with Chaoo's, I'll actually get an error. I'll continue. So remember, this account already exists. Look, we are redirected to this error page. So what I want to show you in the next video is how we can customize this error page. In this video, I want us to customize this error. So first of all, I don't want us to show this page because when we get this error, we can't actually even navigate in our application. We can specify which page is our sign-in page in Auth.js. In Auth.js file, we will have something else, and that is pages. We can specify some of the pages like the sign-in page, and I'll say our sign-in page is stroke login. Now, so far, this is a huge progress because it will not redirect us to this page whenever we get that error. And to test this, let's go back to our home page. Then let's go to login. Now, if I try to continue with Google, we will get an error. And you'll know that we are getting an error if you check at the URL. We have error or auth account not linked. We can be able to read this error from the URL and we'll be able to show it on our login form here. Let's go to the login form here and we will read the error from the URL. We'll make use of the search params and we can use this hook, use search params. We can invoke that and it will give us back an object. So I'll say const search params to be equal to use search params. And we'll say search params dot get. Then we specify the search param. So here we should specify that the search param is this error right there, error. This will return us the value of error, and the value of error is this part, or auth account not linked. Let's assign this to a variable, and I'll say const URL error to be equal to search params dot get error. I want us to customize the error message. If that error is equal to or auth account not linked, let me actually copy it so that it's exactly that. If it's equal to that, then we will return our own custom error message. Else, we will return an empty string, meaning that we don't have an error. So our custom can be email in use with a different provider. And now we can use that URL error to show it on the UI, and we'll do it at the bottom here, just like we did with this right here. Here we'll perform a check of URL error and we'll have an alert message. The message will be our URL error, and the type of alert will be error. So I save. Let's come back here and look, now we have this email in use with a different provider. We could show it maybe at the bottom here, because this is where we have our OAuth, and this error is all about OAuth and not our credentials. So let's actually do that. I think it will make sense if we show it right here. Let's save and let's come back, and here it makes sense. Now if we have an error with our credentials provider, it will show right here. So let's use a wrong password with this and log in. It will give us an error and we'll have invalid credentials here. Now what I want us is that I don't want us to have both errors right here, and the simplest way to clear this error is by removing the error from the URL. We'll come here. In case we get an error right here, what we'll do, we'll just replace our URL with stroke login, and we can use our router.replace method. We'll invoke and I'll use stroke login. So that is how we can replace our URL, and I'll save. Now let me try to continue again here. It's submitting and we get an error with this one, and this one is cleared, and now we only have one error. Now I'll see you in the next video where we will see how we can verify our email in case we log in with email and password. In this video, we'll start to work on our next feature in Auth, and that is email verification. And for this video, we'll just first generate the token, and then in the next video, you will see how we can send that token to our email. I'll start by creating a schema for the token. So just go to Prisma and schema.prisma, and we will add here a model. We'll call this one verification token, or you can say email verification token to be specific. We'll be having an ID for the token. It will be of type string, and then here I'll say at ID. So this will be auto generated. Then I'll say at default CUID, just like we did with the user. So I know we copy pasted the user schema and so on, but it's a similar thing here. I'll hit enter and I'll say email. This will be a string. I'll say token. This will be a string and it should be unique. So at unique like that. I'll have an expiry date for this token. So expires, and I'll say it's date time. Then down here we'll make each token to be unique. I'll add a unique feature and I'll say email and token. So for each email, there should be a unique token for it. Okay, I save and I'll say npx prisma generate. That will generate our types, and we'll say npx prisma db push, and I'll hit enter. Now the next thing that we'll do is to go ahead and generate a token. So I'll do that in our lib, and right here I'll create a new file, email verification .ts file. I should be able to get a token by email, and I'll create a helper method. I'll say export const get verification token by email, and this will be an async function. Email will be of type string. Let's have a try and catch block. I'll say const verification token will be equal to, we await our db dot. Now we should be having email verification, this suggestion, because we said npx prisma generate. So make sure you are importing the db. I'll say dot find first. I'll invoke that, and right here I'll say where email. Let's just return the token. So return the verification token. In case we have an error, the token will be null. Down here I'll create another function now to generate a token. Now to get a unique ID, I'll make use of a package called UUID. So pop the terminal, and right here you'll say npm I UUID, and that will install that package. Now at the top here I'll say import from UUID. Then if I say v, you'll notice that we have various versions of these. Let me make use of this v4 as UUID v4. Yeah. Now I'll come to this function. I'll say const token is equal to UUID v4 and I'll invoke that. And let's create a date. I'll say const expires to be equal to new date. I'll invoke that. Inside here, we will say new date again. We'll invoke it, and at the end here I'll say dot get time. So I will get the current time, and then right here I'll add some time. I'll say 3600. We multiply that by 1000. So asterisk and 1000. So I'll take the current time and I add about an hour to it. So this expires means that our token will expire in about 1 hour. If they don't happen to verify within that time, it will expire. Now down here, I'll say const existing token, and I'll say await. We have this helper method and we can use it. Get verification token by email. Invoke that, and I'll pass this email that we received there as email. If we have an existing token, what we will do is that we will remove it and then we will create a new one. So if we have an existing token, we will say await db dot email verification token dot delete. We invoke that and we'll say where id will be our existing token dot id. Then at the bottom here, we'll go ahead and create a new token in the database. So we have already generated a token here, and expiry date, we just need to create that in DB by saying const email verification token to be equal to, we await our db.email verification token dot create, and we invoke that, and in here we will pass our data. The data will have an email, we'll have a token, and we'll have the expires. And if we check our schema, we'll have email, we'll have the token, and we have expiry date. Then this ID will be auto generated. Now once it's created, we will simply return that. So let's say return our email verification token. I go ahead and save. So I'll see you in the next video where we look at how we can send emails. In this video, we'll see how we can be able to send our email verification token to the email that we register with when using the credentials provider. Resend, this is the platform that we will be using to send emails to our emails. And Resend is so good because in terms of pricing, you'll notice that we have a generous free tier where we can send 3,000 emails per month, and those will be enough for you to actually go ahead and complete this course without problems. And this is not like a promotion video, we just need something good to handle our emails. And Resend is actually also used by Auth.js. If you go to guides, if you want to create passwordless logins, we call them magic links. You can see here we have a way to configure Resend for magic links. So you can go through these docs if you want to configure that, and you'll be using Resend to send the emails. So just go to resend.com and then you'll go to get started. We will create an account. I'll create and I'll confirm it. Okay, confirm account. Now we are logged in. Here you'll see add an API key. Use the following generated API key to authenticate requests. So I'll go ahead and click this and it will generate an API key for me. Let me see how it looks like. It looks like this. So I'll copy that API key. Then I'll come to my Visual Studio Code. Go to the .env file and here I'll add that API key to be equal to whatever I copied. I'll go ahead and save that. I can come back here. You'll see some instructions on how to use it. So all we need to do is to import Resend like that. Then we will create a Resend object and pass the API key like that. And then this is how we'll be able to send an email. All we need to do is to follow this procedure to be able to send an email from our application. So I'll come to VS Code and I'll go to this email verification which we had created before, and we'll create another helper method that will allow us to send emails. Export const and I'll say send email verification token. to be equal to an async function. Here we'll be receiving two parameters, an email of type string and a token of type string. Actually, I think we will need to install resend, and I'll say npm I'll say resend. So this is a version of resend that I'm currently using. You can use the same in case there are breaking changes in future. So it's version 4, and I'll hit enter. I'll wait for it to install. So I'll say const resend will be equal to new resend. Let's import that manually at the top here. Import, we will destructure it from resend. So right here, let's say resend. Down here, we initialize a resend object by saying new resend, and we invoke that. Remember, we should be passing the resend API key. So let's read it from the environment variable. I will go ahead and create a verification link. So this is a link that we'll send to the email, and whenever we click on that link, we will be able to verify the email. So here I'll say const email verification link will be equal to, I'll use these backticks, and then I'll use a $sign and curly brackets, and I can write some JavaScript here. I'll use a base URL, so I'll say process.env. I will include this base URL at the environment variable, and now right here I'll be able to say /email hyphen verification is equals to, here I'll say token. Let's add this base URL in the .env file. For now, it's our localhost, and I'll copy this part of the URL, come here, and I'll paste it there. So I'll remove the / and I'll save that file. Now down here, I'll say const response will be equal to await resend .emails.send. We invoke that, we pass an object, and here I'll say from. For now, we will use this onboarding at resend.dev. Let's come to the documentation. For now, we will use this one here. Actually, let's copy this part of this code. It's almost the same thing, only a few things we will change. So I'll copy, and let's replace this part with that. Right here, we will specify now the email that we are sending to. So when a user registers with a certain email, that is the email that will pass here. Then the subject here, now you can be creative. I'll say verify your email. For the content, this is HTML. You can get creative again with the content of your email. Click. Then here we specify an anchor tag. Remember, here you don't have like syntax highlighting, so you have to be very careful. So it's a link. Click here. I'll say to verify your email. Now remember, an a tag should have a href. I'll start by turning this into backtick. So I'll use a backtick there and a backtick there. I'll be able to add a href to be equal to. Then here I can use quotes like this and have your email verification link in there. So make sure at the end here you use backticks so that you are able to read these like a JavaScript variable like that. This will say that it will return a response. So let's say const response to be equal to that. And then down here, I will be able to return something from this, and I'll say return error response.error. So if we have an error, our response here will be having that error object going on. Okay, property error does not exist on promise. Okay, I need to await. In case we have an error, our error will be having a value, and this is how we get to send the email. So we'll go to actions, then register. So we were successfully creating an account, but we were not sending the verification email. For now, we'll change this success like this: verification email sent. At the top here, we should make sure now we are sending a verification email. I'll say const email verification token or verification token to be equal to, we just await our generate email verification token, then invoke it and pass an email. This email is the one that we registered the user with. Then down here, we'll say const, we will get an error object here like that is equals to We can now await our send email verification token, invoke it. It expects us to pass two things. The first one is the email. We will use this email verification token to get the email verification token dot email, and then we'll say email verification token dot token. So we'll send an email to the email that we registered with, and then the generated token that is saved on the database. If we have an error, we will return an error, and we can say something here, I save. If they don't get an error, then they'll get a success, and then they can check their emails. So let's test this. Now, another thing is that this will only send the verification emails to this particular email, the one that we used, until you register a domain name and configure it with your resend. That is when they'll be able to send to different other emails. Okay, so for now, make sure that you are using the email that you registered with on resend to test this. Let's make sure that our app is running. npm run dev. Let's go to the register here, admin user, although we are not yet admins. Then I will register. So right now we don't have an email that says that we should verify. Register. Let's see what happens. You see verification email sent. Very nice. Let's come here and look, verify your email. I click on that and click here to verify your email. So right now we don't have this page, but when we click, let's see if it takes us there. We are just taken to a logged out page, but it tries to take us to the website. Let's try to copy this and see. Copy clean link. Okay, you'll see that we have this localhost 3000, then we have email verification, and we have a token here. For now, we are able to send a verification link to the email, and we get it like this. Now, what I'll do in the next video is to actually implement this page so that when we visit this page, it will automatically verify that particular email. So I'll see you on the next one. So in this video, we will create this particular page. We'll go to app, then we'll go to auth, and we'll add a new page under auth. Email hyphen verification. So make sure the name of the folder here is the same as the one that you included at the link here. Then I'll create a page here. We create a component. Then right here we'll be able to return something. For now, let's have a container. And in here, we will be having now a component that will be on the client. I'll come to components and let's go to auth and let's create a new component. We can call this one email verification client. It's the trace functional component, email verification client. And for now, let's have an empty React fragments. Let's come to the page here and we'll bring in that email verification client right here. Also, let's import this container component. Then it expects us to pass children, and our children will be that email verification client. We'll be able to get access to that page. And then in email verification client is where we'll be able to get our token from the URL. Remember, we created the token like this, where we added this one right here. Okay, actually there is something that we are missing here. So this is our page, but we should be adding a search param. To add a search param, use a question mark here and say token. Whenever we visit this email verification link from our email, we'll be able to get this token. And that is what I want us to do. So you'll come to the client component, and this is where we'll be able to get the token from our params. So first of all, let's make this to be a client component by saying use client. And we'll make use of the use search params hook. This will give us the search params object, and we can assign it a variable. Now from this particular variable, we'll be able to do something like this. Const token will be equal to our search params. We'll say dot get, and we'll invoke that, and we'll get a token. After we get this token, we'll now be able to actually verify the user. And we will be doing that by making use of a server action. So we currently don't have that server action and we need to create it. Right here, we'll add in auth a new file. Now this is a server action that we are creating here. Use server. We will export const verify email. It is an async function. Then it will be able to receive a token of type string. Now that we are exporting this verify email function, we can make use of it in email verification client here. We'll make use of a use effect hook. So use effect here. Whenever the token is detected or changes, then this use effect will run. So we pass the token there as the dependency. And now at the body, we'll be able to call our email verification verify email, which will come from our actions auth email verification, and will happen to invoke that. It will receive a token. So this token can either be a string or null. I'll say if we don't have a token, let's return. And then we'll be able to call our verify email and we pass the token. After we receive that token right here, we can be able to verify our user. So here I'll say const verification token will be equal to we await db.email verification token, then dot find first, and we invoke it, and right here you'll say where we'll search by token. And actually this token should be unique. So instead of using find first method, we can use find unique like that. We'll say if we don't have that email verification token, we will return an error. If it exists, that means that we'll be able to proceed down here. We will check if this token is expired. So const is expired will be equal to new date, and we will use our email verification token dot expires. That is the date of the expiry. And if that date is less than our new date, so this is the current date right now, that means that the token has expired. If the token has expired, we will return an error. So we are just performing some checks. Let's check if that user is already created in our database. So right here we'll pass the email and we'll use email verification token dot email. So we'll make sure that we make use of our email verification token dot email. If the user does not exist, then we will return an error. So if we don't have a user, then let's have a return statement here of error user does not exist. We are trying to verify a user that maybe is already deleted. Okay, if all that is all and good, we'll go ahead and verify the email in our database. So here we'll simply update our user and we'll say await db.user.update. Invoke this and we'll say where id is our existing user dot id. So that is why we had to check if the user already exists. Okay, then this update expects us to pass some data. So here let's say data, and we'll update our email verified. So we'll say email verified. We will pass a new date and we invoke that. And right here also make sure to say that my email is email verification token dot email. This is for a case where in case later on we want to change email in settings, so it will verify that email and also make sure it's up to date in our database. Okay, and then down here I'll say return a success and I'll say email verified like that. So that is our server action completed for verifying the email. After we visit the link, it will actually go ahead and verify the email, but we need to show the user some interface. In case of errors, in case of success, we tell them. So right here, we will add some states. The error can be a string or it can be undefined. I'll duplicate that, and now we'll have the state for success. Now, in case we have here no token, we'll say set error missing verification token. And then down here, after we perform this async request, we can be able to tap a dot then method. We'll get back a response. This response can either be an error or a success. We'll say set success to be response.success. And we'll also have set error to be response.error. We need to show the UI right here for the error and success. We'll say div. We can have a heading component. We had created that in common heading. We'll say that this heading will be at the center. We'll add the title. Let it be the title of our website. Now down here, let's have a div and we'll say verifying email. And this looks like a pending state, right? Should we add a pending state? I'll duplicate this pending, then set pending. Should it be false or true initially? By default, it should be true. Then right here, before we even do anything, we'll set pending to true. And only after we complete this use effect is when we'll set pending to false. Then we'll show these only when it's loading. So here I'll say pending and we show that div. Make sure you close with the curly brackets there. And this now will be verifying email. Then down here, we will be able to show the success alert component. We'll have a message. The message will be success. We'll have success as the status of our alert. Let's duplicate that. It will be easier for us to edit for the error here. The message will be that of error. State will be error. Now another thing is that after we have successfully verified the email, we'll show a button to take us to the login page for us to log in. When we have success, let's go ahead and show a button component. We had created this reusable component in our common button like that, and let's import it and make use of it right here. The label will be login. We can add an on-click event. We need to make use of router, so let's use the use router hook. Const router will be equal to use router. Make sure you bring this from the next navigation and invoke that router.push, and we invoke this. We say stroke login, and that will be our email verification page. So what do we need to do? We could register this user again. Either we delete the user and register the user again, but I don't want to do that. So what I'll do, in case a user registered and they didn't happen to verify the email that time, what we'll do is that we'll verify the user even when logging in. So during login, we should check if the user have verified the email. If they have not, we will send that verification link. We should go to where we had a server action for logging in. We go to action login. Here we had already commented out, and this is where we write the logic for that. Let's uncomment this code and we'll say if user has not verified the email, we will generate a verification token. I'll invoke that and I'll pass our email user.email. Then down here we will send that token. So we could actually copy these from our register. Let's come here, and this was the process. We generate the token, then we send the token. Let's copy the whole of this part of the code. Come here and let's paste it. So let's import this function. Just the same thing that we did with the register, only that we do now at login. And if this user email is verified, we'll proceed to sign in the user. But if we are not verified, we'll send that verification token. So let's now see what happens. I'll try to log in, then I'll enter a password and try to log in. And let's see, nothing happened. So I found the problem is at our login form. I think the email is actually being sent, but at login, we were not showing a success message. What I will do is to just check the email and see if we have that email, and I will refresh. And you'll see I have been sending those emails, but since we are not seeing a success message, then I thought it wasn't working, but it's working. And we get this email now during login, and it says click here to verify your email. Now at Prisma Studio, we can confirm that this admin user at email verified, we don't have anything. It's null. Let's see if it will verify the email after we click this link. So I'll click the link. Let's see what happens. And we are taken to the login page. The problem is that that link is being treated as a private link. If any route is not among these, it will be automatically be treated as a private route. So here I'll just say comma and I'll add stroke email hyphen verification. Make sure that spelling is correct according to how you named your email verification folder right here. Make sure they are exactly the same, otherwise it will not work. So let's save that file and now try again. I'll click the link and let's see if we are able to visit it. And there we go. We are able to access that particular link. The verification token does not exist. It was repressed. This one does not exist. It is repressed. This one does not exist. It is repressed. This is the latest token according to the time here. So I need to click on this one, verifying email there. And there we go. Email verified. And then we have a button to log in. We should be able to center this nicely. Right now it doesn't look as pretty, but I think it works. If we go to the login now and we try to log in with that email, I enter the password. Let's log in and see if we are able to log in now that the email is verified. And there we go. We are logged in. Very nice. So I'll go back to the code here, components, auth, and I'll go to the email verification client. So I forgot to add some styles at this particular div. I will add a class name, border -2, rounded MD, padding to be 2, I'll flex -call, I'll say gap -2, items to be at the center, margin along the y-axis to be 8, max-width for this one, I'll make it smaller, 400 px, then right here mx to be auto. I'll save that. Email verification page will look nice with that styling. Another thing that we should do is a login form. We should be showing a success message. So you will add a success state like this, and then we should be able to set the success message if we have success. But we had this redirect which will clear the success, but I'm not quite sure. So first of all, let's comment out this, and what we'll do, we'll say if we have a success, we'll set success to be res.success. Then we'll just show an alert of success right here, success, and we will alert a message of success. The status for the alert will be success. I save. Now let's test our application. What I should do is, because I have already registered and verified this email, I'll actually just delete this and recreate the user. So I'll delete that, then come to my web dev here, make sure I log out, and I'll go to the register page. Let's create a user again. I will register. After registering, we will send a verification email to the email, and you'll see verification email sent. Very nice. What I'll do is I'll go to the login and I'll test if email verification will also be sent, and we see the success message here. So let's try to log in. It should not log us in because now we are not verified. We created like a new account. I enter the password. I click login. We should see a success message like that. Nice. Now let's go to the email, go to the latest. I think it's the one at the very bottom, and I'll click on it. It will take us to the email verification page. There we go. Now it's looking much better. It has a border, email verified. This is so good. Then I will log in now. Let's now try to log in when verified and see if we are redirected. And I will log in. I think the login was a success, but we are not redirected until maybe we refresh the page. I want us to do a small recap of email verification because I feel like we had so many moving parts that you might have lost the process of what is happening. And by the way, you are facing an issue with the redirect, and what I noticed that it's not actually clearing our success message even after we try to push. So you can just return it. It's not a big issue. But what have we been doing so far? After we register a user or after we try to log in a user, what we will do, we will check if that user have verified their email. If they have not verified their email, we can use the login example. what we will do, we will generate an email verification token, and then we will send an email to the user with a link containing that token. Okay, now after we click that particular link on the email, it will open this particular page. Okay, this page have this email verification client. We will be able to read the token from the URL. So we use search params to get the token. After we get the token, we created this server action called verify email, and we pass a token to it, the token that we get from the URL. So we can open this verify email server action and see what happens. After we get the token, we will make sure that that token exists in our database. If it doesn't exist, then we will throw an error. We will also check if the token is expired. If it's expired, we throw an error as well. And then we check if a user exists. And if the user exists, we'll go ahead and update the user. And during updating the user, we are just updating this email verified field and setting a new date, meaning that that user was verified on that specific date. And that is all that is happening with our email verification. And remember, for Auth, we were able to add the verification during registration. When you go to the Auth.js file, we had this particular event link account where we automatically verified the user during login. And that is how we get to verify our email, by using resend to send emails and to automatically verify the Auth account's email right here, because Auth have already verified their email even before we do it. Another thing that we did is that at our routes, we added this as a public route so that we are able to access it. In the next video, what we will do is that we'll start working on reset password feature. So I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we will start to work on the next feature of our authentication, which will be password reset. We should be having a form where we can enter an email, and then we send a link to the email that will help the user to reset the password. So the first thing that we will do is that we will create a password reset token, something similar with the verification token for the email. So let's just dive right into our code editor and then go to Prisma schema. Here we'll create another model. It will be similar to this one. So Alt Shift bottom arrow to duplicate that one. Let's change its name here. Password reset token. We'll be having an ID, an email, the token, and expires. It will be so similar, only that we need it in its own table. We will run this command, npx prisma generate, and then let us have npx prisma db push. After that, the next thing that you will do, you'll come to lib. We will add a new file, password reset token.ts. What we will be doing is that we'll be doing a similar thing like this one here. So to make the work easier for us, we could copy the entire of this file. Control A, Control copy, then come to the password reset token, Control V. Now we need to fix issues here. These will be get password reset token by email. We'll pass the email there. Then right here, we'll be having the password reset token. We will await db dot password reset token dot find first, and then we pass the email. Here we will return the password reset token. Now I'll also want to create the next helper method here, which will be get password reset token by token. So instead of by email, we'll say by token. And here we will be passing a token which will be of type string. These will be unique, find unique. Each token should be unique token. And I'll return the password reset token. Let's continue down here. We will generate the password reset token here. So generate the password reset token, just like that. We'll pass an email and then we will generate the token like that. Then we will fetch the token by email. So here we should call get password reset token by email, and you pass email there. Then you get the existing token if the token exists, we will delete it and create a new one. So here this will be password reset token to be equal to db.passwordResetToken.create, and I'll copy this one and I'll pass here. So it's a similar thing, but now we are dealing with the password reset token instead of email reset token. So make sure you rename everything correctly. Then let's move here. So this is sending the password reset link. We will receive an email and a token. We will be able to pass them. And then right here, we get resend by initializing resend. And then right here, we will generate a password reset link. We'll say reset link. It will be this. Then the page will be a different page. We will call it password reset form. Okay. Then we will pass the token like that. Now down here, instead of saying email verification link, we will say reset link. Okay, very nice. So we have created that file. We have created those functions. We will need to have a form where we can enter an email so that we send this particular password reset link to that particular email. We'll start by creating a schema for the form. So in schemas, let's create a new file and I'll say password email schema. So we could come to the login form and copy this, Control A, copy. Then let's come to the password email schema and paste. We'll make use of Zod to verify it. We'll only be having an email, so let us remove the password here. Then we should change the name of the schema. So I'll say Control D and again Control D to highlight all those and say password email schema. After creating that schema, we will need to create a page. Let's go to app, then auth, and add a new folder. Then in there, we'll add a page.tsx file. Here I'll say the trace functional component and I'll simply say password email page. Let us have a container component which we had created in our components layout container. Right here, we'll have the password email form. So let's create that component. Go to components, auth, then add a new file. These will be password. We'll be having two forms for password, remember. This one will be specifically for the email, to send an email so that we reset. So let's call it email form.tsx. Status functional component, then password. This will be email form and we'll be having something here. For now, let's have empty fragments. And now this password email form is the one that we will pass right here in this container. So I'll say password email form and I will self close it like that. I'll save. Now we are done with this page and I'll close it and we'll focus on this password email form. This will be a client component. So I'll say use client. Let's minimize everything. Go to components, auth, login form, and right here, most of the stuff that we have at the top here will be kinda similar, and actually also the fields here. So first of all, let's copy the states. So we'll copy the is pending state, error, and success. Also, let's copy this one, the is pending state, error, success, and this one here where we make use of the use form hook. We copy that part and we come here and we paste it here. So let's import this use state hook from React. Let's import use transition hook from React. Let's import the use form hook from React hook form. And now, instead of making use of the login schema type, we'll make use of the password email schema type. Then here we make use of the password email schema. So password email schema. And let's bring in this Zod resolver. From the login form, you'll see that we were importing the Zod resolver from this package. So I'll copy that, come to the password email, and I'll paste it here. Let me save to auto format. Now let's come back to the login form and we'll be having this on submit handler. Let's copy it. I'll copy and I'll come here and let's paste it. Instead of saying login schema type, we'll make use of the password email schema type. Then this submit handler, we should import it. So I'll use control space and bring it in from React hook form. we'll be having the start transition and so on. And here now we'll be calling a server action that will submit our email. For now, we don't have that server action, so let's comment out that part. Let's now come down here and we'll create our form. Let's go to the login form. We already have a return statement, so I'll hit enter here and I'll hit enter here so that we remain with this form. And I will highlight there and highlight at the very bottom and copy password email form, and I'll remove the React fragments and I'll paste here. First of all, we'll only be submitting an email, so we'll not be having this password part. Let's remove that. The next part will have error, we'll have success, so we'll not be having this last part here, or and URL error and social auth, so remove that section. Let's import heading. From our common heading, let's import form field. From our common form field, let's import alert. From our common alert, then let's import button. From our common button, I'll save to auto format. Here we'll just ask a question: forgot your webdev.blog password. Then you can send an email that will send you a link to reset your password. So down here for the button, you'll have it as submit, and then the label, instead of login here now, we'll say send reset email. So far so good. We should create a server action that will receive the email, and then from that server action we will actually go ahead and send the verification email to the email. I'll minimize everything, go to actions, auth, then create a new server action. Export const password email to be equal to a sync function. Let's use a use server directive at the top. These will receive the form values, then they will be of type the password email schema type, so it's just an email. Validate the values, const validated fields to be equal to password email schema dot save pass. We invoke that and pass the values that we get. If it's not valid, we will return an error. If it's valid, we'll go ahead and get the email from validated fields dot data. So const email will be equal to, I destructure that from validated fields dot data. Now that we have an email, we should check if we have a user with that email. If we don't have a user, or if we don't have a user dot email, then we will throw an error. We'll say a similar thing, invalid email. So there is no user with that particular email. If user exists with that particular email, what we'll do, we will generate a token. So I'll say const password reset token will be equal to, we await generate password reset token. We invoke that and we pass an email. Once we generate the token, let's send it to the email. So I'll say const, I'll destructure the error object, and I'll say is equals to await. Then we send the password reset email. So we are calling now this function, which will actually use resend, and it will send the reset link. We'll invoke it, and here we'll specify password reset token dot email. Then here the second parameter will be our password reset token dot token. So remember this password reset token, if you go to the Prisma schema, it will be having both an email and token. So that's where we'll get them from. Now, in case we get an error, we'll go ahead and return the error here. So if we get this error will be from this particular function. That means that most likely resend is the one that will be having an error or something. Down here, we'll go ahead and return a success message. And I'll say password reset link was sent to your email, and I save that. So we should make use of this particular server action in our form. So here is where we will make use of it. I will return that, and here now instead of login, we'll say password email. Then we get a response here. If we have a response .error, we will set the error to the state. We don't need to this router, so remove the router. And another thing, we don't need to redirect a user, remove the redirect. Then if we have a success, we will set the success state, and that is all we need to do there. npm run dev, or hit enter. Now we should actually customize the message for this one here. I think we didn't customize it. So here I'll say password reset link, and then you'll say click here to reset your password. So I save now. Open the routes.ts file. So I'll say comma, and I'll say / password reset form. Let's go to components, auth, then login form. So this is where we are trying to log in, then we are unable. We should be seeing a link to reset the password. After the social auth, I'll add a div. Let's give this a class name. We'll say flex, and we'll push the items to the end, items -end, and we'll also justify end. Now in here, I can use a link component or a button component. Let me just use a link component now, and I'll get that from next/link href. It will take us to our page, which is stroke password. Make sure it's the correct one, -email -form. Was it that way? It's this one, password reset form. Okay, actually this is wrong. We called this the wrong name, because we should be having two forms. Password reset form, I want it to have the password and then the confirm password where we actually reset the password. But we have this password email form. The password email form will only send an email to our email. So we'll need to rename this page here. We are not like actually resetting the password in this page. So we'll make that public. I'll come to app, then auth, and I will rename this. Just highlight it, and you can click on rename password email -form. So it's password email form, and then the link that we will generate will be having this password reset form link. And if you check now, if you go to your lib, then password reset token, that is what we included here. This will take us now to the other form to actually reset the password. So let's still have it at our routes. So I hope everything is clear now. We are having two different forms here. Now, this is the one that I want us to go to whenever we click that link in our login. Now, this is what I'll include in this href, forgot password and question mark. So when we click this forgot password, it will take us to the password email form where we enter an email, and then we are able to send a reset link that will have this particular link in it and a token to our email. And let's test that now. Okay, now you'll see here we have forgot password. I think I should be adding some styles to this. It doesn't look that good. Components, auth, then login form. That is where we have added it. I forgot to add a class name here. So class name, and we'll say margin to the top of 2. We'll have a text of small. We will underline it. We'll say text is -straight -700, and for dark mode the text will be straight -300. So I go ahead and save now. Let's come back, and now this should look much better, and there we go. Now when I click on this, it will take us to our form. I click, and there we go. So we have now this page, password email form, where we are only sending an email to the email that will enter here. Now let's use this email, the one that you used on resend, and we'll hit send. It's submitting, and we get invalid email for some reason. So it's either one of these errors. To differentiate them, let's say user not found. I'll save so that I know if it's this one or it's this one having an issue. I'll send, and we have this user not found. So the error is right here. If we don't have the user, or if we don't have user.email, okay, this is the check that is failing. Then we return. I will send the reset email again. It's submitting. Password reset link was sent to your email. So now let's go to our email, and there we go. We have the password reset link. If we come to this link, you'll notice that now we have click here to reset your password. Let's copy this clean link and paste it here. And look how our link looks like. We will have a password reset form where we'll have password and confirm password, and then we'll be able to reset the password, and we'll make use of this token to verify that we received the email and the token is valid in the database and so on, so that we are able to reset the password. And we'll do that in the next video. So all we did in this video is to be able to send a reset link to our email. And when we click that link, we'll know that you are a real user and the email is yours, so you can actually go ahead and reset the password. That is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we'll create the actual password reset form. Let's go to our app here, Auth, and add a new folder. Now this is where you'll say password reset form. We'll add a new file, page.tsx, stateless functional component, password reset form, and we'll say container first. Import that from components layout container. Then here we'll be having the client component. Let's create the client component in components, auth, and add a new file. Here we had password email form, and now we'll have password reset form. Let's add client because we already named this a similar name, tsx. Says the trace functional component, and we'll say password reset form client. For now, let's have empty fragments, and this will be our client component. So make sure you say use client. Save, come here and include that here. Password reset form client, and import it, and I'll save. In schemas, add a new file, password reset schema.ts. Remember, this was password email schema. We could copy what we have here, Control A, Control copy, come here and paste. We will rename this to password reset schema. So I'll just say password reset. We'll be having two things, the password and the confirm password field. We had those fields in our register form. So come to the register form, copy password and confirm password, part of it, come here and paste. Now, if you come back to the register form, you'll notice how we had, after our object, we had this refine, which will make sure that the password and confirm password are both the same. So copy this refine method. Then I'll come here and I'll include it after we call our object at the end here. Before we even close with that semicolon, we include that refine. Make sure you have the dot there and save. Now this is it. This is the schema for our form. So for this form, we'll be having something similar to what we did with our components auth password email form. Let's highlight everything, copy, and let's come to this one here. Highlight everything and Control V. We will rename everything from here. Password email form, Control D to highlight at the bottom, and let's call this one password reset form client. So I'll close this password email form and I'll fully focus on this one here. In this particular form, we should be able to get the token from our URL. So I'll be adding something else at the top here, and I'll say const search params will be equal to use search params from next navigation and invoke that. Then we'll be able to get our token from our search params like this. I'll say const token will be equal to our search params dot get. I'll invoke that token. Here we should make use of password reset schema type. You can use Control D to highlight even this one here. Remove that one, and we'll make use of password reset schema type. Okay. And for the password email schema, that should be password reset schema, this one here. And now remove these two imports because we no longer use those. We are using this new one here. Okay, very nice. Now let's come here. Here, you'll notice that we have a server action. What we could do is to comment that one out. So let's come to the form. Our form will be having two form fields. The first one will be password. So ID here will be password. The placeholder, let it be password. Let's add a type of password so that we are not able to like see what we type. We just see the dots. Okay. We will duplicate this form field and we will now have confirm password. The placeholder, let's have confirm password, and the type password. So that is good. Let's change this heading and we'll say enter your new web dev password. Then let's come here. The label will be save new password, like that, and I will save. Now let's create a server action that will receive the password from here, and it will also be receiving our token. So minimize everything, go to the top, actions, auth, then add a new file. Now I'll call this one password reset.ts. Remember, this was password email for sending an email. Then this is the actual file where we will reset our password. Now let's copy everything from our password email, come to the password reset and paste. Now at the top here, we'll be receiving two things. The first one is the values, and they will be of type password reset schema type. So here, change these to password reset schema type. The second thing that we will receive is a token. The token will either be a string or it will be nar, and it can also be undefined, so it's optional. So use a question mark there. Let's also change the name of this function to be password reset. I will remove this unnecessary import now, and here we will validate the fields by using the password reset schema. Make sure we import this. Let's remove these now. This import is no longer in use. And if we don't have a success, we'll say invalid password. And another thing, even before we validate the fields, we'll come at the very top here and make sure we have a token. So if we don't have a token, we will automatically return. So if we don't have it, we don't have to continue, we immediately return. Then we validate the fields. Now let's come down here. We will be able to get our password from our validated fields. So instead of email, we will get a password. From this point, let's clear everything else. Let's remove all this. Remove. And you can remove the unnecessary imports. We will now be able to check if we have that token available in our database. We'll say const existing token to be equal to await, and we had created this particular helper method, get password reset token by token. We invoke that one and we pass our token, and that will give us an existing token from our database. So I can control click this. This is the code for that particular function. We had created it at lib password reset token, and we created this. I told you that we'll make use of it later on, and now we are making use of it here. If we do not have an existing token, we will return an error. Then we'll proceed here and we'll say const is expired to be equal to new date. We invoke that and we pass our existing token dot expires, that is the date of expiry there, and we'll check if that is less than the current date, which is today now, by saying new date. So we'll say if is expired, we will immediately return here an error, just like that. Then right here, let's check if a user exists. We'll say const user will be equal to, we await get user by email, and we'll invoke this and we'll use our existing token dot email. Then if we don't have a user, we return an error. Here we had destructured our password from the fields, and I feel like I can cut that line and include it at the bottom here. So I'll paste, we get the password from the validated fields, and now we need to hash this password. We can go to our register server action. This is how we hashed the password. You can copy that and paste it here. Also, we make sure to bring in bcrypt. This is how we imported bcrypt from bcrypt.js. Copy that and import it. Now that we have a user and we have a hashed password, what we need to do is to update our user. So here we'll say await db.user.update. Let's import this db from lib. We'll update the user where the ID of the user is our user.id. Then we'll pass the data and we will say password is hashed password. Another thing that we will do is that we will immediately verify this user. So if they are able to reset the password by making use of the password reset token, remember that token we are sending it to their email. So if they click that link and they are able to reset the password, we know that it's their email. So we can immediately verify their email just like that. And I'll also update the email and make sure it's our existing token.email. Now, another thing that you can do, you can clear up the password token from the database. So down here, if they have already used the token, we will just delete it. So we can await db.password reset token.delete, and we will say where ID is our existing token.id. Now down here, we'll go ahead and we will return a success, and I'll save. Now that is our password reset server action. We need to make use of this password reset in our form. So let's return this part of the code. Instead of password email, we'll now be having password reset. Let's make sure that we are also importing this password reset from the actions, and we remove the password email because we no longer use it in this particular form, and I will save that file. Now at this point, we can try to reset our password. Here we successfully sent a reset email. Now if we come to the email, we were able to receive it, and now we can click on this. Now that we have created the page, this link, and it will take us to the page where we have a token and so on. Let's see. It's loading. Here we have our form where we have a password and confirm password, and we have enter your new web dev password. Another cool thing is that we are now at password reset form, and here we have a token that will be used. We'll just know the user by making use of this token, okay? And I'll confirm it. Also, you can try to like mess up here and see if you get any form validation, and you see password must match. Very nice. I confirm that it's the same and save. Submitting, and I get invalid reset token. Why? So something is obviously wrong. If we don't have a token, we do that. Okay, I know where the issue is. In our password reset form, we called our server action this password reset with only the data, and we didn't pass our token. So here, make sure you pass the token. So you could change the error here and say token does not exist. So that is a much better error for that case. So we could have known immediately that the token does not exist. Anyway, let's come back. Let's save submitting. Let's wait. Password updated. Very nice. Now to confirm if it was updated, use your new password to log in. So we'll come to login, use the email that you have reset for, and I'll use the new password to see if I can log in with the new password. Actually, let me first try with the old password and see if I can log in, and I get invalid credentials because we have updated the password. Let me now use the new password, and I'll click on login, submitting, and there we go. We are logged in. So my password reset is working well. And that is the logic for resetting a password. Pretty nice, right? In this video, I want us to complete our authentication feature, and we will be adding a role to our user that is either a role of user or admin. And also I want us to expand our session so that our session will have both the user ID and the role. And whenever we access the session anywhere in our application, we'll be able to get the user ID of the currently logged in user and also the role of the currently logged in user. Let's start with adding a role, which is pretty easy. We just need to come to Prisma and then schema.prisma. I'll add an enum type. So I'll say enum will be user role, and we'll either be having an admin or we will be having a user. So this enum will make sure that the role is always either the two. It cannot be anything else. And I'll go ahead and save that. And now what we need to do is to expand our user here. So go to where you had the model for user. We'll be having a role and it will be of type user role, and we will set a default. So here I can say at default will be user, like that. So I go ahead and save that. Now you should generate the types by saying npx prisma generate. Now the next thing is to put that in sync with our database by saying npx prisma db push. Okay, very nice. By just doing that, whenever we create a user, by default the role will be set to be this user there, and we can update for our admin directly on our database. Basically, we will not be having many admins, maybe one or two. So whenever you create a user and you want them to be admin, you update that on the db. npm run dev. And also I can run our Prisma Studio here by saying npx prisma studio. And once we come here, after we said npx prisma db push, you'll see here the role was automatically updated to be user by default. And now you can choose your admin user, and I'll come here and you can see we only have two options, and I'll change to admin, and then here I'll say save changes. So that will update our database so that we have one admin user, and once it updates, this is the user admin that I selected there. So that is how you can add normal users and admin users. Now we need our session to have the role so that we know if a user is admin or a normal user, and also to have a user ID. Now if you go to Auth.js.dev website and go to guides here, you can come to extending the session, and here you'll have a guide of how you can extend the session. We can expand the session by making use of JWT. So this is why we first update the JWT token, and then in the session we'll have access to that token and use that token to expand our session. And we make use of callbacks like this. So I'll come back to my code here and open your auth.ts file. So here I'll say callbacks full colon and open it like that. Here we should be having a comma. We will have an async JWT function. This function will be able to receive a token. We make sure to destructure it in an object like that. Then we open the body of this function and we should be returning a token by default. Let's come right here and we'll say if we don't have a token dot email, let's immediately return. So I will return token. So let's come here and get a user. Const user will be equal to, we await get user by email, and we say token dot email. Now that we have a user, the user will be having a user ID, right? First of all, let's make sure that this user exists by saying if we don't have a user, let's just return the token. Now that we have a user, we can go ahead and expand this token by saying token.roar will be equal to user.roar. Then we'll say token.user ID will be equal to user.id. And that is how we can expand the token by using the user from our database. And now if we console log it like this, our token will be having a role and it will be having an ID. So I'll just save that. Look, our JWT token was updated, and you can see we now have the role is user and the user ID is that. And now we can use this token to expand our session. In callbacks after JWT, we'll now have an async function here. Session, we'll invoke it. We will be able to receive the session and we'll be able to receive the token. Then I'll say if we have a token dot role, then we'll be able to expand the session in there. Then down here, if we have a token dot user ID, we will be able to expand the session again right there and include the user ID. And at the bottom here, I should just return the session. Now let's expand the session by adding the role. So we'll say session.user.role will be equal to token.role. Now this complains if I hover, property role does not exist on adapter user and user. So we have some types issue with the session. Let's come down here and say session.user.user ID will be equal to token.user ID. And you can see here it also complains. So what I'll do, just come at the top here and we will say like this, we will declare module and we'll specify that our module is next-auth, which is this specific module there. I'll just open it like that and I'll create an interface here and I'll say interface session will be having a user. This user will have a role. The role could either be user or it could be admin. Here we'll be having a user ID which will be of type string. We should now make this session to also include the default session. So let's get the default type for the session. Right here at Next.auth, you'll import Next.auth and we'll also be having a type of default session like that. And now our session will be user like this, and we'll make sure that we are also having our default session. Use square brackets and specify here user. So basically we are expanding our user to have role and user ID. I know it's a weird syntax going on here, but all you need to know is that we are expanding the session and specifically the user have role and user ID. And now I'll come down here. You'll notice that it is still complains. If I hover, you'll see type of object is not assignable to type user or admin. So what I'll say is that token.role as user or admin like that. This also complains. It is seeing this as an object, but it is a string. So here I'll just say as string. So basically what we have done is that we have expanded our session type, specifically the user part of it, to have the role and user ID in user. And also we have expanded our session now to have a role and to have a user ID. So let me remove this console log and now we can check if our session is expanded as well. Remember, I had added a console log at the navbar where we had session as session, and I just want to see if our session will now be having a role and a user ID. So we get a session here, I expand it, we have data, we have user, and now look, our user is having a role here and a user ID. And that is exactly what we want, because we'll be making use of this user ID for different stuff and also the role to know whether we are logged in as a normal user or as an admin. Now, one last thing that I will do in this video is to make sure that I get the image for a user here. I'll make sure that our component is a client component, and now I can make use of the used session hook here to get our session. I'll say const session will be equal to use session from Next.auth React. Click on that and invoke it. I'll be able to get an image URL. I'll say const image URL will be equal to our session dot data dot user dot image. I use a question mark here in case we don't have a user. And if we don't have a user, we get undefined. We'll set this to be an empty string like this. So right here, instead of saying quotes, what I'll do, I'll include the image URL. Now for GitHub and Google Login, we'll be having that image. And if I come back, look, this is the icon that I use on my GitHub. So if I visit my GitHub, you'll notice that is what I have as icon here. And that is now what is showing right here. Pretty nice, right? That is it about our authentication.